I'm really excited to dive into today's office hours, all about how to negotiate on your terms, which I feel like is relevant for all of us. So, before we officially begin, I want to share a bit of background information on our esteemed expert. Janit is a lawyer with more than 15 years into her career and is focused on helping women executives and founders negotiate without having to play power games. Her background includes a career as a human rights lawyer working for nonprofits, switching to family law practice and litigation, starting a marketing department for a legal publishing house, and having her own law firm focusing on helping businesses with contracts and negotiations of all kinds. Throughout the past 5 years, she has lived in 7 different countries and leverages those experiences along with being a woman of color to inform her approach to negotiating. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Janit. We are so excited to learn from your expertise today. We know how valuable your time is, and since you're in Sweden, we know that you are staying up a little late today. So thank you so much for investing in the collective in this way.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully, I'm trying to make this as tangible for you all as possible, because I know negotiations tend to be a bit esoteric if we're talking about it in general terms, or very theoretic from what we've learned in university. So I'm coming from the perspective of human rights, where negotiations are reconciliations or mediations and trying to overcome some sort of conflict. And then through family law, where it's all about conflict and trying to burn bridges, the lawyers are trying to get them not to. And then in startups, when it's like to get as much value extraction as possible. So having all those perspectives led me to a philosophy that it really is about the relationship, not about the money, not about the conflict, not about the value, but the relationship that you're going to have moving forward once you get into negotiations. So I want us to have that in mind when we dive into it, so that you know where I'm coming from. So today I want to focus on both negotiation skills and a method that you can use, and how to apply that specifically to expand businesses and forward your career, maybe through hiring or being hired, but also through collaborations and partnerships that allow you to have a bigger vision. So let's get started with the first foundational thing that we all need to have the same idea about. What do you think about when you hear the word negotiation? That's my question. So what is that? One thing. Can you share a word in the chat? What is the first word that pops up in your mind? Yeah. Jessica is writing tension, communication, looser, fear, screwed, anxiety, scary. These are not positive words, and that is what usually comes up. Many see the Shark Tank image, and you're spotlighted and sweating and all these things: power dynamics, collaboration, power, feedback, I will crush you. These are harsh, loaded situations. Collaboration is a step in the right direction. So to me, these are the things you think about as pressure points in your life. But the thing is, you're doing it all the time. You're doing it when you're agreeing on what to have for dinner with your partner, or when to meet with a friend for a Zoom date, or when to have that call with that client, when to get your client to pay you even though they're late, or when you get that employee that you have and they say, I can't deliver this by Friday, and you're like, when can you deliver it? Can you do it by Monday? Or can I take a few days off? Yes, you can, but you have to compensate those days. So you're agreeing on something. That is what negotiations are. It's an agreement conversation. So with that perspective, you can see how, yes, it's all of these high-powered situations where you're negotiating something that feels like high stakes, but it's also something you do a lot. So thinking back, past week, how many times do you think you came to an agreement or a disagreement on something with anyone in your life? You have a number, put it into the chat. I know this is going to take a little while. So, Nicole, how often did you come to an agreement or a disagreement, because negotiations don't always come through, in the past week with someone? Could be in your private life, in your business. Jenny, 75, Morgan, 14, 10, 3. Jessica, I'm going to challenge you. Have you not been talking to people this past week? Because I think it's more. But if you haven't, that's probably correct. 20, 15. Yeah, this is the thing. We negotiate all the time, every day, but it feels like we're not. Yeah, but Jenny, you should include your work and your kid. Doesn't matter who you're negotiating still. It still matters. It's still also prime opportunities for you to practice going forward. A lot of us have the feeling that we're bad at negotiating. You're negotiating with your cats, Jade. Yes, and you tend to lose. So it's really something you can do because you are natural at it. You're doing it all this time. It's just that when you have to do it for work, it feels different. So we're going to break it down to 3 different relationships and see how you negotiate those. So we're going to look at personal, professional, and business. So personal is your private life. That's just you in whatever capacity. The professional is you with your career hat on. It doesn't mean that you're doing it in your business, but it's you presenting yourself as your professional self. And then finally, business is the formalized version, when you're tying something to your business. So going forward, we're going to have 3 examples. The first one is agreeing on what to have for dinner. So let's say that Morgan and Eloise are deciding what to have for dinner. Going forward, I'm going to use you as examples. If you have input, put them in the chat later on, but we're going to have that as an example. And then for a professional example, we're going to see that Jenny is hiring Nicole and seeing how that could look like. And this, Nicole, is your dream job. And Jenny, this is really, really important for your business. So those are the 2 scenarios. And finally, for collaboration, if anyone is having a collaboration in mind that they've had in the past, that is a current one for them or an upcoming, I'd love to have you on and do that live as well when we go forward, so to see how this can play out in a real life scenario. So if there's a volunteer, please let me know. It's not going to be scary, and I'm not going to make you reveal a bunch of things. We're just working through a scenario. But if there are no takers, I have a scenario for us. Oh, Nicole, perfect. Then I'm going to release you from being employed. And
you have to release me because I just got called downstairs and then just came back. So I don't even know what I was employed
okay,
for.
You were employed by Jenny for a little short while, but you're not anymore. So Jade is going to be employed instead. And Nicole, I'm going to use your scenario. We're going to get to that just in a minute when I get through the first segment. So you can mute yourself again and take a break. So those are the scenarios. And going into it, let's talk about it from a relationship standpoint. What are the best relationships based on, in your opinion? Trust, 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 trust. Yes. They're all based on trust, honesty. And what are you getting from them? Okay, good feels, connection, community, happiness, different things. Perfect. Support. So you're all pointing in a direction that everything can be captured under. So the best relationships are based on a value exchange. It could be value as in you're exchanging values that are your held values, or the values you're exchanging that are assets and resources. It's true for all of them. It's not always equal value exchange. It's not tit for tat, but it's reciprocity of some form. Even with your children, you're exchanging something, you're getting something in return, hopefully, if it's a good relationship. So it's the best ones. They're based on a value exchange. And then those values can be divided into 4 categories, and every single relationship, every single negotiation is about these 4 categories. So the first category is input. Oh, I'm not scrolling anymore. Sorry. Value exchange and then input. So input is everything that needs to go into your agreement in your negotiation to make the deal function. So how can you execute the thing you have agreed on moving forward? What assets do you need? What time needs to go into it? Whose effort? Whose resources? So that's the first part. And I'm going to give you examples once we get to our 3 scenarios as well. The second thing you need is the output. What is this going to produce, this relationship, this agreement? Are we going to get more money together? Are you going to get something? Am I going to get something? What is the thing we're building or enhancing through working together or collaborating in some format, even if it's just for dinner? So then you have to look at the responsibilities. Who's doing what with regards to the input? Who's responsible for making that happen? Or who's responsible for making
Like we're having some fun technology issues, so I'll be back in a moment to try and determine what's going on.
Very sorry about that. Zoom kicked me out. I don't know why. So we were at responsibilities. So the 4th one is, once again, scroll, yes, boundaries. So that is the container for input, output, and responsibilities. What are the limits? What is the least amount of input you need? And what is the max amount of input you need? And then the same for the outcome. What is the least you need for this to even be worth doing and seem deemed successful? And is there a max for the output as well? Shouldn't you go beyond a certain point? And then who's responsible for what? How much time are you willing to put into it? How much time are they willing to put into it? What resources? So that you have a container for it. So what does this look like in practice? When you look at the dinner, for example. So Morgan and Eloise are trying to decide what to have for dinner. The input here is someone's going to have to make an order. Someone's going to have to pay for it. Someone's going to have to receive the delivery if you're eating in. Input. Outcome here might mean that, yes, you're going to have food. You're going to meet up as friends. It might also mean that you're going to get the nutrition you need, depending on your perspectives. So someone might be really invested in getting the nutrition, and someone might be really invested in getting a quick meal. There might be really different outputs that you want, but it's still like that's part of the discussion. So then it comes down to dietary restrictions for the boundaries. All of these things. So that is how it plays out in a really simple scenario with dinner. What are the things you're putting into it? And you can see how that plays into negotiating bedtime or all of these, like taking out the trash, all of these minor things, they still have these components. It's just that you never speak them out loud, most of them, because you know the other person and you know not to push them when they're hungry, or you know exactly how to push them to get them to do what you want. So that way these negotiations feel effortless. So then let's look into the hiring scenario for Jenny and Jade. When you're hiring, you need to be really clear about the input from both ends. So if you are the employer, what do you need to happen in this role in your company? How do you need them to onboard? How do you need them to interact? What do you need them to bring? What expertise, what skills, what connections? But it's equally important for the person being employed. What is the input for me? What do I get? What support do I need to execute to the outcome that they are expecting? Do I need vacation days? Do I need healthcare? Do I need travel vouchers? Do I need to work from home? Do I need an ergonomic desk? Do I need colleagues with expertise that complement mine? Do I need access to the influencers in the company? Do I need an assistant? So then you see that this is in relation to needing to essentially prove that you can do the outcome. So in a work situation, the outcome can be, if you're in a sales position, we need to increase our bottom line. We need to up our conversion rate. That might be an outcome. And then you can say, yes, but then I need to be able to use these methods, these tools as an input. And then responsibilities, once again, what are my responsibilities as the employee? What am I supposed to be doing? What is the employer's responsibility? And what are other people's responsibilities in the organization that supports the outcome that we want? And then boundaries. I think we're pretty good on boundaries, what they should be in an employment situation. We're not good at enforcing them, but we know in theory that there should be boundaries on time, on expectations, on performance, on presence in the office, and all these things. So that is the package of the value you're exchanging and how you can frame that. And then Nicole dropped out, so we're going to use my scenario instead, unless there's someone else who really wants to talk about collaborations. So fictional person, occupational therapist, and she has developed an assessment that quickly establishes what is needed from everyone in the workplace. Her national professional organization is now interested, she thinks, in collaborating on using this assessment throughout the organization with every occupational therapist that they have. So input would be from her side, her IP, maybe her expertise to show them how to use the assessment, maybe to help them evaluate assessments, host workshops, all of these things. From their side, it's not worth anything to her if they don't use it. She wants them to use it. So how can they guarantee that they're spreading it, sharing it in their organization? And also paying for it, another input. Money is important. So that is what the input could be in this scenario when you're collaborating on this larger scale. And then you have the responsibilities and the outcome. So outcome here is very different for them. She wants money and she wants reputation so that she can be acknowledged for being this leader in her industry. They want a tool that's going to help their people perform better. All the occupational therapists, and they're going to have to improve the image of their organization because they can provide this tool. So two very different things. If they're also allowed to sell the tool to their professionals, they're also looking to gain money. But she is looking to gain the money from them, and they're looking to gain the money from someone else. So that is a different monetary expectation. And then finally, the boundaries. Maybe they can't share this assessment tool beyond the members, or maybe they can. Maybe she is not allowed to share it with anyone else. Maybe they want a single license just to them. Maybe she wants it to be for only a year and they want it to be for 4 years. What are the boundaries here? So we're going to leave it at that because we're going to move into the next segment that's going to show us how do you know which values to exchange, because you might not know. And how do you usually figure that out? So when you're negotiating, how do you figure out what the other person wants in the past? Or have you not tried to? That is also an answer. Hope and assuming. Yes, that's what most of us do. We do. We hope and assume. You ask about their priorities. Great. So I think that's kind of sums it up. We're assuming because we're projecting what we would have wanted, which is not wrong always, but it's an easy shortcut. And then we ask about their priorities. And that is what you should be doing, investigating. You should be the most curious you can be and ask questions. And a lot of us are afraid to ask because we feel like that makes us seem inexperienced or like we don't know what we're talking about. So the key is to ask really open questions. Can you tell me more about this situation? Can you explain to me what this would mean to your organization? Instead of asking for specific detail-oriented questions, because those are the ones that make us feel like we don't know what we're doing and might give that perception. But if you're asking these open questions, they're going to take it as you being very invested in their success, very interested in how their organization works, very invested in the relationship. And they're going to start asking the same questions back. So ask the base level, what is on the horizon for you if we do this together? So what you need to investigate are 3 things. The first thing is the context. Why are you having this negotiation? What is the deal you're trying to make, the collaboration? How does that fit into their ecosystem and your ecosystem? Are there third parties that are going to be impacted? Is this part of a bigger campaign for someone? Or is this just an isolated thing that is more internal than external? Figure that out, because there might be third party interests, players that impacts how they're going to interact with you and what their boundaries are and what they are wanting to achieve or what they can promise. So once you have the context figured out, look at the motivations. Why have they come to you, or why have you come to them? Why did they take your call? Why is this interesting to them? You might have gotten some of those questions when we talked about the context, but ask them. How come this is something you want to pursue at this point in time? Open question. And then ask yourself the same thing. Why? You need to know why you're doing this. Otherwise, you're not going to know your boundaries and the direction you need to take this negotiation and this conclusion that is going to unfold from that. Finally, you need to look at the desires. So context and motivations are present or past, but the motivations are future facing. So what do you want to achieve based on this? The motivation is why, but the desire is what? What are you going to get out of it? So what does success look like to you based on this? Ask them, ask you, have that in mind. So this is how you extract the value exchange. Because then you're going to get the information to, if success looks like this, we're going to need these resources. We're going to need this type of outcome. I'm going to need this type of boundary. So you tie that in to understanding where the values fall and how they play a part in this negotiation. So you start by investigating, then you create the value exchange, which I call the offer, through the investigation information. And there might still be you having to do some assumptions, and that's fine. Because once you get into the negotiation part, you can still iterate and you can still figure out how to make that match better with your values and their values. So now that we're at this point, how does this relate to our 3 scenarios? So for dinner, what is the context? Morgan has not had lunch. So she wants a big meal. Yeah, it's time for something big. And she's had a day, so she wants something decadent. But Eloise had a late lunch with a client. Yep. And she's also trying this new thing, so she shouldn't be eating any salads. So this is the thing. Context, it matters. Also, Morgan once got screwed by an Uber Eats driver, so she's not ordering from them again. And Eloise does not want anything that's homemade. Context. So you can see how it's sometimes harder to find overlap because the context matters. And if you hadn't asked these, you might have suggested something that was outside of these contexts. So next thing, motivation. Why do you want dinner? Morgan wants a nice relaxation with a friend, had a day, longer meal, nice pace. Eloise, she has a meeting to get to after dinner. So she wants something that's relatively quick, gonna arrive on time. It's important to like chop this entire thing. Different motivations. And then finally, the desires. What do you want to get out of it? So Morgan, once again, wants decadence. She wants to feel like she's earned it. She's gonna have it. There might be dessert. And Ellie just wants something that's gonna keep her going for the rest of the night because she has much more to do. Clashing desires, motivations, and context. Can we bridge it? We're gonna see. But that's where we're at. And then for the employment, the context for Jenny, why she's hiring is because her business is expanding. She needs this new role filled. So she's not quite sure how that's going to fit into the ecosystem because it's going to be something that this person has to co-build with the company because it's a new role. And it's also a bit nebulous. Jade, on the other hand, She wants a role that is clearly defined because this is her first time filling a role like this. Context. So motivations, Jade is taking it because she tried to run her company and she's exhausted. She thinks maybe this role will be like a consulting client, but sort of an employment. Not shade on you, Jade. A lot of us do this. I'm just doing a scenario. And then these are contexts that you need to uncover as you go. Motivations. Jade, money. Jenny, money, but not money from each other. Jade wants the money from the company. Jenny wants the money that this role is going to bring her in the company. That's what the motivation is. For the desire, Jade wants a 9-to-5 because she hasn't been doing 9-to-5 for a long time, and that's what she wants. Jenny wants someone who's going to go that extra mile and do that extra thing for the company. And she thinks that's self-evident, so she might not even say that. And Jade thinks it's self-evident since she's now taking a position that it should be 9-to-5 because that's what it says on the paper. So that's where we're at with those people. And let's get back to our occupational therapist. The context for her is that she wants to expand, but she doesn't want to add more hours. She just wants more money to her company. And the professional organization needs something to offer their members because they're going to raise the membership fee. Context. Motivation, once again, Jade, money. Money on the other side. A lot of times it's money, but if you go deeper, it's something else. But we're going to stop at the money because that's easy to understand in this context. And then the desire, Jade wants to be seen as the expert in her field moving forward. She wants to be that thought leader. So, no, not Jade, sorry, the occupational therapist. And she wants to be that thought leader moving forward. So that's why she wants to share this trademarked information that she has so that it can become known in her industry that she's the maker of that. And the professional organization, they want to be known for being the best professional organization for occupational therapists because they have a competitor. So if they can tie her, they're going to have resources that a lot of them will want, so they will switch to their organization. They want more members. So now we're going to get into the gritty. You have investigated, you have offers ready because you have some value exchange. You can tie that into an offer. What do you do then? What is your role during a negotiation? What is the role you normally take? Type it into chat. And I can just preface this, but a lot of us take traditional roles, or we think we have to. So we either dominate or we play submissive, or we play mediator or diplomat. All these typecast roles that you see everywhere, yes, you mediate. A lot of women mediate, and you forget to represent yourself. That's what happens every single time. But the role you should be taking is that of a facilitator. So you should step out of the entire scenario that's been built for negotiation and facilitate. So this will allow you to work with a dominant, aggressive person. It will allow you to work with someone who's very skittish when it comes to negotiations, because they're not going to see you as threatening either their position as dominant or submissive or as a mediator. They're going to see you as helpful while you get to drive things forward at a pace that suits you and making sure that everything is covered the way it's supposed to be. So the first part of facilitation is people. You should make sure that the doers and the decision makers are in the loop, and the decision maker should be talking to you. So the doers are the people who are going to help you execute whatever deal you're making. They should be either people that you can direct or they can direct to do things. But if they're more autonomous, you need to make sure that whatever input and exchange that you have decided is something that they are willing and able to execute. So that's people. Then the process. Is there a deadline? How do we meet? Where do we meet? When do we meet? And does everyone have access to the right kind of information? So I see Jade asking, what's the difference between mediating and facilitating? Mediating is really trying to find the middle ground in making sure everyone's happy. if you're facilitating, you're not majorly concerned with the happiness level of people. You're concerned with the unfolding of the relationship and the situation. So you are concerned with the thing you're building and the negotiation process. Whereas if you're mediating, you're only concerned with the people. So see this as the more logistical side. I'm still saying people here because people are part of the logistics, but see it as more logistics than, I know it's harsh, but mediation can become coddling. That's not what you're doing. You're the tour guide. Because you're going to represent yourselves then. So you don't have time to represent them. You're just going to, that's what the mediator does. They're representing both parties. You're just going to represent yourself and be the tour guide so that you're on the right path towards coming to an agreement. So the process is information that people are getting so that they have everything they need, the doers, the decision makers, that you have all the information you need, and that everyone is on the same page so that you can make a decision. And then finally, you also need to facilitate the purpose. And that is the joint purpose of why you're here. So that is always kept top of mind, because it's easy to get sidetracked, especially if egos get involved. So you start thinking about, maybe I can get that extra thing that is like outside the scope, but maybe we can get some ice cream more things. We're gonna get dinner, but I want ice cream too. Like, what are these things that are outside the scope? Yes, I'm always gonna say no. So that is what you need to think about. Like, what is the purpose here? And what can you find a joint purpose that's going to be even better? So if you facilitate those three things, let's see, it's going to make it much easier for you to have a role that is more about, from their point of view, you're being very, very helpful. You're being very, very invested in this relationship going forward. And it's also going to allow you to see how they respond to that. Because what you're also doing throughout this entire process is testing out what a relationship with them will look like. Are they taking advantage of you being helpful? Are they appreciating you if that is something you need? Are they also stepping up and being helpful as facilitators? Because it's not meant to be a solo role. You can invite them and even delegate facilitation to them. Is that, can you give me this information so that we have that in my organization? But that role is very non-threatening. And a lot of us negotiate with people who like to be intimidating, and they've been taught to be intimidating because that works in negotiation when you're in a position of power. So that game is rigged. Don't play it. Do facilitation. It works with even the most scary people because they don't see you as taking control. They see you as being the secretary, but not in a submissive way. So helpful. Let's see our scenarios then. So for dinner, what are the people that need to be involved? Well, Eloise and Morgan are both decision makers, right? You're gonna have to decide together what to have for dinner. It's looking very difficult at this point, but this is a together thing. And then you have the doers. Someone's cooking your food because you're not doing it yourselves. Seems like someone is delivering your food. Maybe there's a doorman picking up the food. It's probably easy for you to get them to do what you want because you click in an app and this is going to happen. But still, there are people. So if someone has a preference of those people, you need to update them. Hey, we've moved to location. Hey, the doorman couldn't open. Hey, this is our code. They're going to have to be kept in the loop. So that is part of the process. This is when we want the food. You probably type it into an app, but still, it's part of the process. And then what is the purpose? For you to eat together. Yeah. So the food needs to arrive on a specific time before Ellie's meeting starts so she can eat in peace and not in 5 minutes. Yeah. So that is how you facilitate dinner, but you also do this organically. So it doesn't have to be this big thing, but it's a great way for you to think about these components moving forward so you can practice. So employment. What are the people that need to be involved? Is there a supervisor? Is there a board that needs to sign off on these people? Do you have someone that you have as a mentor that needs you, that you need feedback from before you say yes to this employment, Jade? So the people are more interesting for you from decision-making standpoints and doer standpoints when you're being employed and when you're employing, because you might need to have everyone who's going to work under this person also in the loop somehow to know the competencies so that they can have an opinion of this seems feasible for them to get the help they need to execute what they're supposed to be doing. And then you have the process. When can you start working? When can we meet to talk with your supervisor that you want to talk to before you say yes? All of these things, facilitate them. And then the purpose. It's good to know exactly why we are negotiating this at this point in time. Is there a rush? Is there something that you need to perform within a specific timeline for them to actually hire you? Is there a test you need to do to prove that you have the competency that you said that you had? And then finally, occupational therapist. What are the doers and decision makers here? She might need to have a lawyer in loop so she can do proper licensing. That's a doer on her side. They might need lawyers on their sides, other doers. They might not be deciders, but they're going to have influence on how the deal plays out. So they need to be kept in the loop. The professional organization probably has a lot of people that have a stake in teaching this new method, sharing this new method. Maybe the marketing department needs to talk to her because they need materials about how to talk about it. All of these doers, figure them out. The process, once again, how do you transfer these materials? When do we have the meetings to explain that deal has been made? Or before the deal has been made, when do we have the meetings that determine if this is a good fit with the people who are going to use your assessment so that you know that it's going to be used the right way? Is there an education component before you even say yes, so that you know that they understand how you want it to be used? And then the purpose. Purpose here is a little bit different because you want to be an expert, but they want more members. Do you have a joint purpose? Try to facilitate that. Maybe the joint purpose is to develop more resources for your professional category. Maybe there's more to come in the future. And this is the first step of your collaboration, to see that you can actually do this together. And that's going to give you a way for everyone to still be on their best behavior for the longest time possible. So, quick run through this entire process. So negotiation is investigation, creating a value exchange, and then facilitating the agreement conversation. But what about the elephant in the room? What about the money? The hard part. What about the money? So the next question I have for you is, how do you feel about bargaining when it comes to the money, about haggling? Yeah, I see Morgan's face. That's how we usually feel. How do you feel when you have to say a sum of money, or you have to counter, or you feel like you have to counter? Probably a bit stressed, a bit nervous, a bit unsure. Is this the right number? Is this the wrong number? What am I doing? Am I doing it wrong? Am I asking for too much? Am I asking for not enough? What is happening? So I want you to step out and take a different role once again. And I want you to be an accountant. For some of us, that's going to be easy. For some of us, that's going to be hard. But what you want to do is take a more methodical look on this process. So the first thing you need to look at is adding the line items. What are the values that are exchanged? What are the inputs going into it? Because that is the value. Who's providing what resources? Who's adding this time? Who's providing expertise? Who's working for whom? Who's paying for dinner? All of these things. So you put that on each side, and you're going to see that it's imbalanced, because it usually is, unless you're actually exchanging professional expertise or something. But usually there's an imbalance. And that is what the money is for. The money is for balancing the books. Having this perspective means that you always have an anchor for why you're asking for a certain amount of money, or why you're rejecting an offer that they're making. Because you can always anchor it back to the line items. The value that is exchanged is still lopsided. You're not going to tell them that it's lopsided because they're not going to care, but you're going to frame it as the money needs to be in proportion to the value that is being exchanged, and the perceived value they're going to get based on their investigation you did, if you can fulfill their desires, money. And I know this is still hard because it's always something that is subjective, but what does this mean to them? So one question you can ask is, what will this X, whatever it is, do for your organization, do for your professional relationship? What does that mean? And try to get them to describe it in a way that involves a sum of money. It doesn't mean that that sum of money is the money that they should be paying you, but you will have a ballpark of what this actually means. So let me see if I can make an explanation. The professional organization, they're estimating that as a result of this new assessment, they're going to get new members to a tune of 5 million a year. Seems feasible that she could be asking for 10% of that, because it's going to be annual, year over year. So that's just a ballpark. Just try to anchor it in money. It doesn't have to be 10%. I'm not even saying that rule, but if you get them to save 5 million, you saying 200,000 is not going to sound like a lot. And that is what you want to do. You want them to say a number that's much higher, because you're talking about the entire value of them implementing something or getting something into their business. And sometimes it's more intangible. So maybe for being employed, you can't really get them to say a number of what you're going to get, because they're not going to share that. But what does that mean for your organization? Maybe it means it runs more smoothly. They have credibility for fundraising, all of these things. So once they have that in mind, they're going to be much more receptive to your number. But it's still an evaluation. It's still a research to see what is it worth. For dinner, it's easy. You split. Or if someone has done some heavy lifting in the past, maybe someone treats someone to dinner. But for the job, you can do it 2 ways. Maybe they come with a number. You're not comfortable pushing back, but you still feel there's an imbalance in value exchange. Add more benefits, add more perks, add more things, so that you can balance the number. If you cannot balance it by money, balance it with other things that you can get. And the same for the occupational therapist. Maybe she can add the number, but she can add longevity to it. That this is not just a one-time thing. Maybe it's a subscription thing instead. So different ways. But what you want to add is the notion of you're balancing the books. That's all you're doing. You're not asking for too much or too little. You're just trying to balance the books, and they're going to help you do that by pushing back. And then finally, once you come to the haggling, this is when you're talking about the exact numbers of money. There's a system you can use called the Ackerman model. And it's based on the notion of first giving sort of a more shocking sticker price and then going closer to what you want. So let's say we're haggling about 10,000 somehow. If you want the number to be as low as possible, you start 35% lower. If you want it to be as high as possible, you start 35% higher. That is not your goal to get that. Sometimes they'll say yes to that and you're going to be like, what happened? But yes, this is just a starting point. And you should make sure that they know it's a starting point. Then you move on to 15%. That is a significant difference. So if it was 65, it's now 85. You've moved quite, like 6,500 to 8,500. You moved quite a bit. So that seems like, oh, she's really willing to compromise. Okay, maybe they'll meet you there. That's really good. But if they're not, you move another 10% closer to 5% from the price. So that would be 9,500. Math is not my strong suit. This is why this helps. And what you do then is showing them that you're slowing down, because the gap between 35 and 15 is not as much bigger than 15 to 5. So they're like, okay, we probably can't squeeze too much. But if they're still squeezing, you go to your target, which is 10K. And you also tell them that, yes, but then I also need, you bring in a value thing. If we're going to do this, I also need. That's going to signal to them that this is the end of the haggling. And you're also going to get something that is going to make you feel a little bit better about not getting extra money. So that is the way to do that part. And it's sometimes uncomfortable to start at 35. So you can diminish the numbers a little bit by getting closer. So maybe you're 3%, 10%, 22%, 25%, but these are easy to remember and easy to use. I also have a calculator for you that you can just use and plug the numbers in and you'll see them. So that is the bargaining part. There's a lot to be said for that. I kind of rushed through everything because it's so much, but what you need to remember is to investigate, create an offer, and facilitate the process for negotiating this offer. And that makes it seem like something you can do even if you're right-brained or left-brained, because either you go all in on curiosity and creativity, or you're the scientist exploring this new frontier, whatever that is. So try to make it as systematic as possible instead of making it this thing that is you on the line, because it's not. And it really should be about the relationship. So if they're at any point not respecting you, not making you feel valued, or not making you feel comfortable, remember, you're dating them now. This is what the negotiation is. You're dating. It's not going to get better. They're at the best behavior right now. So if you can live with that, do it. But if you can't, try to find someone else. So yeah, this is the essence of everything. You're welcome to head over to my website. Nope, that's the Haggling calculator. Exactly what I was saying. And also connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. I normally do this one-on-one with founders, or in the spring, there will be an accelerator, business relationship accelerator program if you want to add collaborations to your business, and you can come join us for that. But really, I'm up to having a conversation anytime, because to me, this is fun. I'm an odd person, but I hope it was helpful. And if you have any questions, we can take those.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was amazing. And I love the tangible like calculator and numbers. So helpful. So yeah, we'll go ahead and hop into a Q&A for the next 8 to 10 minutes or so. I will kick us off with a question that we received from the RSVP submissions. And then if anyone has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or unmute yourself. So the question is, how do you get others who influence the decision to agree to your terms when they aren't a part of the meetings?
Yes. So this is about the doers and the decision makers again. What you need to start doing is the person that is the gatekeeper, because that's who you're talking to, be low-key annoying enough. And that is by being curious enough, asking questions enough that the decision maker can only answer, that they feel it's easier to bring the decision maker to the table than going back and forth. That's how you call them out if you want to do it strongly. Otherwise, you just ask, who is going to sign off on this? Who's going to actually sign the thing? We need to have them in the room because I have very specific questions for them. If they're not respecting that boundary, start asking those questions until they bring them to the table or they're made aware of them so you get the answers you need going back and forth. But most people find it very annoying to go back and forth too much. So they bring them to the table, even if it's just like them calling in to the meeting you're having, if you're in person. So that is the easiest way to do that. And it's also the easiest way for you to make sure that the decision maker is aware of the more creative parts that you want to add or detract from your agreement. And it's the same for the doers. If you actually need to know that someone can do the thing that they're saying they can do, ask a question that doer would know, but not the gatekeeper. So that's the key.
Awesome, thank you. Another question that came in is how to work with larger companies when doing partnerships.
Yes, this can be intimidating. I would suggest doing it in milestones. So instead of negotiating the whole thing, because that usually takes months and months, try to negotiate the first phase or whatever you're supposed to be doing so you can get a taste of what it's like to work with them, but also they can get a taste of you. And that's going to sort of oil the machine going forward. So I would do it in milestones. with the decision maker that is in the closest proximity to you. Tailor the first milestone around them so you don't have to go digging through the entire company and negotiate the entire deal. So start building clout within this organization if possible. So I think that is the easiest way to do it, but it's more cumbersome, and it might mean that you have more than one decision maker because they have other stakeholders that also want to be on that meeting. So try to tackle them one by one, and you have to investigate a lot more to really get to the bottom of these questions, because you're not going to have access to a lot of the people in the organization. So it means asking a lot of questions instead of asking them, because they might not be able to answer you if you ask an open-ended question like, what does success look like to you in this case? So you can start by saying, I presume that success looks like to you in this case. Is this correct? Can you confirm that from your organization? So you start with an assumption and ask them to confirm it or not. So that starts drawing people out a bit more. But it's more cumbersome, and it's a lengthier answer than I can give in a short while.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. Teresa dropped a question in the chat. She said, how do you communicate to a new client that the first price you give, 35% higher, is not a final one?
So you want to give this in a situation where haggling is expected. So if it's a new client and you're not really giving off, and it's not common in your industry that haggling is something you do with these fees, they're more of a given. You probably don't want to go to 35. So what you want to do is, if they have unreasonable requests that ups the value of your most common package, you can say that this is beyond what we normally have in this package. The normal price is this, and then you tack on the extra fee, which could be 35%, depending on what they're tacking on. So you have to, I would do it like this instead. Don't give them the 35 as an extra if you have communicated something else, like it's starting from. Let your starting from be 35%. So whatever you're communicating should already have that extra on so that you can go down if you need to, not the expectation that they should negotiate you down, if that makes sense. So it depends on your industry. If it's an industry where you're meant to haggle, you can be more vague about it and say, I feel like the price should be this, instead of saying the price is this. So if you add uncertainty into how you present the price, the right person is going to see that as an opportunity to go back and forth. So those are the two different ways, depending on if your industry is receptive to bargaining or not. Yeah. Oh, good. That makes sense. That's nice. Great.
All right. If that,
I guess we're on time. That's
yes,
good.
this was perfect. It worked out so well. Thank you so much for just showering us with all of this information. It was so amazing and very helpful. And thank you everyone for joining and showing up, participating, and just making this such a pleasure to learn alongside you every week. We will see you on the next office hours, and I hope everyone has an amazing day and almost weekend.